You're all right.
Yeah, good, thanks. By the way, I'm not the one that's been sending you the messages. This is
No worries.
me, Rob, part of the team here.
No
Okay,
worries, mate.
so we are live, so let's go straight into it. So, hello, Newcastle fans TV. Hope you are all well. And this is the opposition fan reaction to that 1-1 draw from earlier this evening. So, James, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Yeah, keeping well during lockdown. Could be better if Villa had a slightly better return to action, but yeah, not too bad.
Good, good. Have you said hello yet?
No, I don't think I have.
Not,
Hello. Hi all. How
yeah,
are we?
yeah. Not to me, not to me, not to me. The championship. Because that is what is going to happen in
I didn't
about a
realise
month's
this was going to be a
time.
stitch up.
No, that's the only thing. The rest of it from here is all serious stuff. So yes, that's how we've got on to this. Now, do you see that performance as a point gained or 2 points dropped?
I think it's 2 points dropped, to be honest. And I say that with all due respect to Newcastle, because I think obviously been playing some decent football since the restart, especially in that 3-0 win over Sheffield United. And obviously there's a lot of quality in that team as well. So I think it's 2 points dropped for us because we've got a really difficult run in now, and that's the kind of game that we needed to pick up all 3 points from if we're going to, make the best of this relegation battle. We've got Wolves at home next game, then we've got Liverpool away, then Man United at home. So it's a difficult run of fixtures between now and the end of the season, and based on that, I think it was a bit of a must-win game. I think it ebbed and flowed a little bit. We were probably the better side in the first 20 minutes or so. Had the lion's share of the ball and probably created more chances as well. Trezeguet had a good chance at the back post and should have buried it, but didn't in typical Trezeguet fashion. And then, middle third of the game, I thought Newcastle grew into it and probably were the better side, to be fair, in that period, and then deserved the lead. I think it was a sloppy goal to give away from our perspective, with Tyrone Mings being pulled out wide by
Yeah,
Carroll, and then
yeah.
obviously Courtney Howes, and Courtney Howes followed him, and that left Ezri Konsa at right back in a difficult position where he was caught between two players and was in two minds. So difficult one to take, but then at the same time we get a stroke of luck with the equaliser. So on the balance of the game, I think probably a fair result.
Yeah, with our goal, it was very much one of those, like, if that was a move in chess where we managed to get Mings out onto the left. That's one of those moments where, as soon as he's done that, you've realised the mistake you've made, and it comes back to bite you. But
Yeah,
I can
absolutely.
certainly see, yeah, I can certainly see from a personal perspective from Aston Villa that was 2 points dropped on the basis that tonight was definitely a game that, yeah, you must have thought this is a chance to get 3 points against a team also in the bottom half. But does it make you feel any better that tonight we've had fan reaction video, had player ratings, and many of our commenters and people coming on the channel have said that from our perspective, that's 2 points dropped. So does that make you feel any better at all? That it's two
To be
points dropped from our view as well?
To be honest, it doesn't. Only because I know that Newcastle, in my opinion, are safe already, and I think
Mm.
while you may have aspirations to break into the top half of the table, it doesn't really give me any comfort that Newcastle feel it's 2 points dropped as well. Because I can see that, because obviously Villa are in a relegation scrap, and when we're playing the way we are at the moment, any team coming to play against us is going to see us as maybe an easy target. To be fair, and you're going to want to go into that game, especially at home at St James's. Not the same, obviously, in front of a lack of a crowd, but you're going to go into that game wanting to pick up the win. So I can understand why Newcastle fans would feel that way as well. I think both sides will feel the same, but no, unfortunately, it doesn't give me too much comfort as a Villa fan, because I think we're still banging trouble. Obviously, still second from bottom, still in the relegation zone, and still with a really bad goal difference as well. So no, I'm struggling to find the comfort in anything at the moment, to be fair.
Yeah. Now, set pieces have been our Achilles heel since the start of the season, and that certainly continued tonight. Of course, Conor Hourihane knocked in some excellent corner kick deliveries. Of course, your equaliser came from it. Do you think that Conor Hourihane should have started today, considering how he does have a demon of a left foot?
He does. You're right. He's got a wonderful left foot, to be fair. He's a really talented midfield player, and as you say, that dead ball delivery is special. And I think it's up there with I'm not going to go over the top and say it's the best in the league because clearly it's not. But it was certainly up there as one of the best in the Championship, and it's out swinging, in swinging. He can whip them in with pace. He can drill them in, low and hard as well. So he can cause real problems with his set piece deliveries. And based on that, you could say, does he start on another day? And did he deserve to start today? Maybe he did. Tricky because we brought in Trezeguet out wide, and I'm not Trezeguet's biggest fan. I like El Ghazi. I think they're similar players, but I think Trezeguet is a little bit wasteful and doesn't always show the same heart that some of the other players do, in my opinion. So for me, I'd have probably gone for a more of a narrow formation, brought in Conor Hourihane, and dropped Trezeguet. But having said that, with the pace that Newcastle have in the wide areas with Richie and saint-maximin especially, I can understand why we've kind of overloaded in the wide areas.
I think it's just a case of a matter of time now before Norwich eventually get their relegation confirmed. So that makes the final 2 relegation places really close. And as you can see on your screen there, 3 teams on 27 points each. Plus, of course, you've got Watford, who are just 1 point ahead, for a little bit of a gap between Watford and Brighton. But how do you rate your chances knowing that is like a little 4-team league that are trying to scrap it out for 2 places, one of the 2 places either side of that dreaded relegation line?
Well, it's a really difficult one. I think looking at the league table, as you say, it's very tight. It's very close. It's going to go down to the wire. I think. I think it's going to be the old cliche squeaky bum time for us. Interestingly, we've got West Ham last game of the season at the London Stadium. So I think that's going to be a huge game, and it could well go down to the wire, which is going to be absolutely torturous for a Villa fan like myself, and I'm sure it will be torturous for West Ham fans as well if they're in that situation. But in my opinion, and I hope I'm wrong, but looking at the teams that are down there in this relegation scrap, I've been impressed with Watford lately. I think that they, before the lockdown started at least, that they were showing some real fight. Obviously pulled off that amazing result, beating Liverpool at Vicarage Road, and they've got those characters in their squad. And as much as I don't like him, Troy Deeney, is that kind of player that you need in a relegation battle. He shows heart, he shows determination, fight, and they've got a number of characters in the squad that are kind of similar to him. So I think Watford will be okay. To be honest, I think, as you say, Norwich are down. I feel for Daniel Farke because I think he tries to play the right style of football, and he tries to be positive. He doesn't sit in and doesn't play negative football. But I think the killer sort of Achilles heel, if you like, for Norwich is the fact that they don't have that kind of firepower in the final third. They don't have that. Obviously Teemu Pukki is a decent striker and showed some good form at the start of the season, but I don't think you can lean on just him. And I think Villa have got a similar issue. So I think, to be honest, it'll be Norwich go down, and then the other 2 places will be fought out between Villa, West Ham, and Bournemouth. Because since the restart, for me, West Ham and Bournemouth have looked really poor. I saw Bournemouth play Palace at the weekend, and Palace played them off the park for me. And you watch Palace tonight against Liverpool, and they look very ordinary. To see them sort of brush Bournemouth aside the way they did, it's worrying for Bournemouth. Obviously, they had a couple of injury concerns on the day as well. I know Josh King was taken off, which is a worry for them. And West Ham, watching them last night against Spurs, they just don't seem to have a sense of urgency, because you look at West Ham's squad and it's studded with quality. You've got unbelievable individuals, the likes of Felipe Anderson, which is the main one that springs to mind. But they don't seem to have that, that killer instinct and almost that fighting spirit and the urgency that you need in a relegation battle to throw caution to the wind at times and throw the kitchen sink at teams and really try to press to score first, rather than just sitting back and trying to protect a 0-0 draw or maybe a narrow 1-0 lead.
And now, if you go down, now, of course, you've got Tyrone Mings, who I think is an excellent player, excellent Premier League quality player. He's been knocking on the door for England call-ups since the international breaks. Now, if you do go down, how do you rate your chances of keeping Tyrone Mings?
Interesting one, actually. I had a discussion about this the other day. I personally said that Mings stays, I think, if we go down, only because I think he seems to be passionate about the club. I know that obviously it'll always seem like that when you're going through a decent period, the way we were last season, obviously gaining promotion and doing it in ideal fashion, going to Wembley and getting the win. But he wears his heart on his sleeve. He seems to be a decent guy as well as a good footballer. So I think Mings, I definitely think there'll be interest from Premier League clubs. But what I ask myself personally is, having watched Tyrone Mings throughout the season, I've been frustrated with him at times, because I think opposition fans look at him and say, he's had the England call up, he's looking good, he's progressing, he's a good leader. But what other fans, I think, sometimes don't see is that, I'm not slamming him at all, but at times he lapses concentration, at times he loses the ball in key areas, and at times he gets dragged out of position like he did tonight. And I think that's an area of his game that he really needs to improve on if he is going to make the move to maybe a top half Premier League club. Because at the moment, in my opinion, I don't personally think that Tyrone Mings is at the level to be playing for certainly not a top 8, sort of top 6, top 8 Premier League club. So I think Mings, I'd be quietly confident of keeping hold of Mings. And to be fair, I think with COVID-19 and the financial impact, after we paid 20 million plus for him last summer, I don't see many clubs that would probably be racing to offer that kind of money for a relegated centre half.
Interesting. And now, of course, you return to the Premier League this season following a 3-year absence. What were you, during the off-season last year, what were you expecting to come up against this season? What sort of position were you expecting?
I liked to think that we could sort of, bid for mid-table. I never got ahead of myself. I know, obviously, the money we spent in the summer was eye-watering, really, especially compared to many other Premier League clubs. And that probably put a lot of pressure on the likes of Dean Smith and the players to perform and to prove that, they'd invested the money wisely. They'd brought in the right players, the right personnel. So I think there was always that pressure there. But yeah, for me, I thought it was always going to be a mid-table or a consolidation season. Did I think we'd be in quite this much trouble? I had an inkling that we might, but I didn't honestly expect to be second from bottom with 8 games to go, or 7 games to go, however many it is now. So I think I'm disappointed based on what I was hoping for. But am I massively surprised? Probably not. And I think the thing that worried me in the summer was the fact that we've done this before. We've gone to a summer transfer window with owners who want to back us, owners who want to put money into the club, which is great and that's fantastic. But if your recruitment strategy is not on point and you don't bring in the right players, football, as we all know, is a cruel business. You don't get any consolation prizes for taking a punt on a young player and it not working out. I think when we got relegated that season, sort of the summer before, we brought in a load of players. We brought in sort of Jordan Veretout, we brought in Jordan Ayew. There was a lot of French players in that team. There was a Carlos Sanchez as well in the centre of the park. There was Carlos Gil, who was Spanish, Adama Traore, Spanish. So there was a lot of different languages, and you almost felt that looking on the pitch, they looked as though they couldn't really gel as a team. And you guess there were probably quite a few language barriers and communication issues between the players because there were just so many different cultures and backgrounds in the team. And I think I don't think there's so much that problem this season, but I do think there's an element of we've brought in a bit of a mix and a mishmash of players from different leagues, different clubs, different backgrounds, and chucked them all into a team, made quite a few changes to our personnel. And maybe we've just tried to make one or two too many changes. And I think at times that can come back to bite you, because when you're trying to gel a new team and get them playing as one and playing as a unit and understanding each other, it takes time, doesn't it?
Yeah, trying to reinvent the wheel, I guess you could say. Now, do you think the individual players, do you think you might have got good value for money for what you've bought in the summer? Because it was a lot of money that you did spend, about 140 million, if I'm not mistaken, and yet you're still in a relegation battle. Do you think you've had good value for money from your signings this season?
No, I mean, obviously not. You've got to look at it and say we're 19th in the table, having spent 140 million pounds. So you can see the graphic there of the players that we brought in. Ezri Konsa, 12 million pounds. unproven at Premier League level, probably paid over the odds for him. Courtney Howes was £3 million, so I don't think you can really say too much about that. Tyrone Mings, 25 million, around that sort of ballpark. Overpriced for me. Good player, good defender, but for me, overpriced. Matt Targett cost us, 14 million, rising to 17 million. I don't think I'm being outspoken by saying that I was quite surprised by that deal and surprised that we agreed to pay so much for Targett. I think he's a decent left back and does a job in the bottom half of the Premier League, sort of, or the upper echelons of the Championship. But that was a sort of a heavy deal. McGinn, we actually brought McGinn in last season, so obviously he was great value for money. Sort of £2.5 million from Hibs. He was an absolute snip. Amazing signing for us. But look at Trezeguet. I think he was around £7-8 million. It's not a huge amount in the current market, but he hasn't really returned anything. El Ghazi was around £8 million as well. I think he was a tidy enough signing. He's had a few goal involvements, and we didn't pay too far over the odds for him. But you look at Wesley, our record signing him for a fee in the region of sort of 22 to 25 million, and he obviously has been burdened with this huge injury, which is a shame to see. But let's not sugarcoat it. Before he got injured, he wasn't really cutting it. He gave his heart, and I would never question his desire to do well in a Villa shirt. But I think he always left something to be desired. When you played him up top as a lone striker, and you played whether it be a long ball or a short ball into him, the ball very rarely stuck. His first touch wasn't great. He didn't have a brilliant ability to hold the ball up, considering how big he is. And to be fair, his finishing left a lot to be desired as well. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Heskey, with no disrespect to Heskey, because he scored a few goals for Villa, but we all know he was a bit of a clumsy player at times. So, looking at all those signings and just like recapping and reminding himself, like, wow, we brought in these players and paid that much money for some of these players, and it's disappointing because it fills you with hope. I remember when we signed Wesley, I thought, yes, this is our marquee striker we've been needing for years. Since Benteke left, we've never really filled that void of having a top target man. And I thought he'd do the business, but unfortunately he hasn't. I'm hoping he can come back from his injury and have a resurgence, but certainly so far it looks as though we had a fairly sloppy summer, to be honest.
Yeah. And finally, to look at things from a philosophical point of view. Now, I did philosophy at uni. So what do you think is has been the ultimate cause? Everything has a cause. What do you think has been the ultimate cause of this relegation battle? Could it have been the recruitment policy? Could it have been Dean Smith not really being up to Premier League standard? What is it that you think has been the ultimate cause?
Yeah, difficult. I don't think you can put it down to one thing, to be honest. I think, we brought in Tom Heaton at the start of the season, who's a great, established Premier League keeper. He's had spells injured. He got injured. We then brought in Jed Steer, from the squad, who came back from injury himself. Then he played about half an hour against Wolves. He got injured. Then we bring on Orjan Nyland. Then we were forced to bring in Pepe Reina in the transfer window. So we've had a lot of disruption in the goalkeeping department, which I don't think has helped. I think that's obviously the basis on which you sort of build your team and build your squads. But I think generally we just did not secure enough talent that had proven Premier League experience in the summer. And I think especially taking into account the amount of money we spent and the ambition that we showed with the money we spent, I just feel as though we maybe should have looked a little bit more into investing in players who had, proven Premier League quality, or at least proven quality in elite leagues in Europe. Maybe La Liga, maybe Bundesliga, maybe Ligue 1 in France. If you can bring in players of that ilk and they've shown that they've got the caliber and they've got the qualities and the raw materials to do well in that league and at that level, then I think you set yourself up for a bit more success. But when you bring in a lot of players who are probably unknown from leagues that aren't necessarily the same standard as the Premier League, then I think you're struggling. And to be fair, as I say, I think it's a combination of factors. I don't blame Dean Smith. I think he's a good manager. Do I think he could have been maybe quicker to make subs in the past? Yes. Do I think he could have been quicker to change systems in the past? Yes. But I think he's a good manager. He's proven himself in the Championship, and I think he's shown that he's got the materials and the qualities. But yeah, if I was to try and put it down to one thing, which I don't think you can do, but I'd probably say the key contributing factor has been just our recruitment and the lack of established top tier players that we brought in the summer.
Mm. And that brings up to a nice round 20 minutes. So James White, thank you very much for joining us on Newcastle Fans TV. And if we play you at some point again in the near future, you'd be more than welcome to come back on the channel. So thank you very much from all of us here. Have a nice night.
No more stitch-ups next time. Up the Villa.
You know me.